All right,
Sure.
Chad, let's talk about the early years. The early years, 2019, 6 years
Long
ago.
time ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So, like, what was life like when you first started running the company? Because this is a brand new concept for you. What were some of the challenges that you had to overcome?
Yeah. Gosh, I feel like we hired pretty well for the first concept. Like we hired a guy from the wine bar that came to be our kitchen manager, and a girl that was a server that had been with us for a while was became our GM. It's a lot of little tweaks every day and
Hmm.
just how we do things as we're figuring things out. But one of the and I wouldn't say challenges, but the executive chef that was at Luvino and was basically helped create that concept. He also created the menu for Biscuit Belly. And chefs are going to be chefs.
Sure.
We got like the free range farm, mushrooms from that are like $20 a pound from the local mushroom guy, and a really high end cheese and
Right.
this and that. And then when we get our P&L for the first time, and we're like, oh man, I thought breakfast restaurants were supposed to have a lot better food cost than this. And so, we had to kind of uh unchefify it, so to speak. We had to go with like a general mushroom and
Right.
maybe not the highest quality of cheeses and all this stuff. I mean, it's still very, very good, but it just wasn't sustainable with the super high quality, super uber local ingredients that we were using. And obviously you can't scale that
You
either.
can't scale a five-star breakfast place.
Yeah, yeah, it ain't possible. So we had to make a lot of changes there, which ultimately made the our cost of goods better and like the total unit economics better. But I mean, it was really, we were very popular from day one.
Hmm.
Kind of lines out the door every Saturday, Sunday, very well received, had great reviews. So it and there's always things to improve upon, but it like we started off very well because I'm a very psychotically detailed planner. And so I wanted, I'm always going to make sure our ducks are in a row before we press go and that we're actually
Hmm.
ready. So, but like now that we're scaling up, and that's just like location one, right? And then, but now that we're scaling up, we've brought on some real talent to help us get there, people that have scaled brands before.
Hmm.
And I think that's been our biggest learning that we would share with others is if you're starting a startup brand, don't go out and get like the guy that's been at Cracker Barrel for 15 years or Panera for 15 years, like completely different skill set.
Right.
Go out and get people that have created something and grown something essentially from the ground up, not that just can follow the systems that are in place. They need to build the
Hmm.
systems. And so we've built the team with very startup driven and startup experienced individuals.
That is great advice, Chad. And that could be applied not only to, that position, but to other positions in franchising for folks. Because if you're in franchise, let's say you need to sell franchises and you're an emerging franchise brand, you don't want a guy who's been selling franchises for McDonald's. It does
Yeah.
not relate. You don't want to say, "Oh, I'm so proud I've got a guy who sold franchises for McDonald's." That it's not applicable. You want somebody who knows how to sell franchises that has sold emerging concepts because it's a different type of buyer, right? And it's no different than somebody whether it's in operations or in any position they're there for. But also, if you think about it, also as a company that you're growing and expanding, you also want to hire talent though who has also been they're the they're the next step ahead of you too, so that we can
Oh
look
yeah.
to them to grow. But if they're, for example, again, back to a McDonald's where the brand has been around since, the fees, it does not compute. It just does not. It's not applicable,
Yeah. Yeah. Selling, and I hate the use word sell, but like it's essentially what we're doing.
right? We can call
Um,
franchise development or,
yeah.
awarding franchises, but at the end of the day, somebody's selling franchises, right?
Yeah. 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 But I mean, it's a completely different buyer. You're getting more onesie, twosie, threesies, typically less sophisticated. We've been pretty lucky and who we've been able to attract that
Right.
are very, very seasoned in the restaurant space. But yeah, those people are hard to find. And it's what every other concept is also trying to find. So you're fighting against these same few people that typically want to be involved in larger brands because you have the brand recognition and you have
Right.
the support and you have so many things figured out. And you can just contribute to a brand fund and it's taken care of for you. You're not having to
Right.
get out there and like beat the streets, at a more community level. If you have the Golden Arches or Colonel Sanders,
Right.
on your sign. So, so yeah, I definitely agree with that. We always say we want to be pushed by our people. We don't want to be pulling them.
Hmm.
Along. So yeah, we have brought people on that are they're change makers and they're experienced, and we know we kind of have you kind of have one shot at building a brand from the ground up,
You're right.
and uh, we see it more as an investment than an
Hmm.
expense to bring on some more experience, which typically costs more, right? So for us, it's more of an investment, and it has definitely paid off for us.
Smart. Chad, how many company-owned locations did you have before you awarded your first franchise?
Yeah, probably far too few in many people's eyes. We started. It was after the second one. So we had two in 2019 open, one in
Hmm.
May, one in December, and then obviously COVID hit. But we felt with our business partners huge success and experience with Papa John's and growing that brand. He was honestly very anti-franchise for a little while when we were talking about it, just because he's like, hey, man, I lived this for 25 years. It can be really good, but it can also be a pain in your butt.
Franchising
So
is not for everybody. There and people who have not franchised before, they think it's quick money, and that couldn't be any more further from the truth as a
yeah,
franchisor. And you're playing the long game.
yeah, you really are. And you always think that you yourself are going to be the exception for everything.
Of
Like,
course.
well, yeah, those horror stories that happened to all these other people, those won't happen to us. We haven't had horror stories or anything by any means, but we definitely see where I can really unravel.
Of course. Yeah, yeah, of course. Okay, so you have six franchises open now. You have eight company owned. I'm curious on your strategy. Since I talked to so many founders and they have, strategically they think about just being opening company owned, opening a dual strategy or just franchise. What are you guys doing moving forward, do you think? Because you've got a few more company owned than you do franchise. Is that by design? Do you want to keep that parallel strategy?
Well, and not to get too much in the weeds here, some of our company owned are actually more joint venture. So we manage and control them. We do
Mhm.
everything soup to nuts, but they are with outside equity, but we can buy them back at a later date. So we can either refranchise them or we can go the corporate route. But we aren't sticking to any certain numbers, percentages, or whatever. We are very opportunistic as far as continuing to grow in the right areas with the right people. I would say almost always ask that question as
Mhm.
like when people were just talking to either on a podcast or whatever. But, we started to do these joint ventures because we had people that wanted to be involved in the brand, but they didn't have any interest or any knowledge maybe of running restaurants, but they still really liked what we were doing. And so it was like more friends and family deals. But that allowed us to continue to grow, validate the brand in other markets, continue to improve operations, continue to open more stores, get PR, all these things eventually will help us hopefully get more traction on the franchise side.
Mhm.
But and quite honestly, like this is a super naive thing that I thought, but I thought we would turn the franchise light on and the phone would just start ringing off the hook, right? But
Don't we all?
yeah, I mean, I think that's what everyone kind of thinks because you think your brand's going to be better than every other one out there. But even if it is, you still have to go out and sell that story. And
And also, slow and steady wins the race, not to award
yeah,
too many franchises too soon.
exactly. Yeah, we've been very diligent and careful with who we've brought on. One of the original Raising Cane's franchisees told me, you don't want to be a paper company. You don't want to go out and just sell a bunch of deals and sell paper essentially because, your first franchisees will dictate and the success that they have or lack of success will
Hmm.
dictate what your future looks like.
Absolutely. It's a ripple effect. It will impact you for years to come. Those first dozen are critical.
Yeah. So we've been really careful. And by doing the joint ventures, by bringing on and waiting on kind of the right franchisees to join, our AUVs have gone way up. We've gotten so much better in opening restaurants, operating restaurants, supply chain, marketing. I mean, just the whole thing. The stores that we open now look way different, both physically and just like the numbers within them than the first few did. Mm-hmm. So we don't have a magic number to answer your question. If we can continue to raise money, build these corporate/JV stores, we'll do that. If good franchisees come along, we'll do that. I know, they're very different business models, but at the end of the day, you're operating restaurants. So You're operating the same restaurant. So it's either, are you supporting someone and are you influencing their decisions, or do you have a direct impact on the decision making like you would a corporate store, and it can hire and fire and all that. So it's a matter of influence, but again, at the end of the day, we're making biscuits.
Right.
Hopefully.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fiume, or Emerging Franchise Group, LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.